Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to Hoboken Talks. This is a show that's broadcast from the upper gallery of the museum. Our broadcast schedule is on the second Thursday of the month and the last, and we are in the last. And so happy you could join us. Those of you who are signed into YouTube, you can, if you're a user, you can actually text a question. And of course, these shows are archived on almost all the social media platforms. So, this program has been long awaited, and it was really tied into a project. And of course, it was created by our special guest. And I'm sitting here with Frank Hanavan. And again, we're on Hoboken Talks, as you can see, nice graphics. It's produced by Rand Hoppe, who's also in the studio here. And I use the term studio very broadly.
Oh, we're in a studio.
We are. So, Frank Hanavan, welcome to the show.
Hi, everybody.
Here
Thanks.
we are.
Thanks for tuning in to the channel, and I hope they're all supporting the museum and our regular guests, and are
Sure.
absorbing all these Hoboken Talks and other video productions
We got
at
it.
the museum.
Frank is no stranger to the upper gallery and to the museum. He's been working on projects with us for decades,
Ooh, a
I
long
think.
time, yeah.
I don't have the answer of how long.
I
it's
like
been
museums,
affiliated.
and this is a great museum. It's
Yeah.
a great museum.
We're
Everybody
lucky to have Frank, and he embarked on a project that I think we kind of co-initiated. And I think
Right.
I remember asking Frank like a year and a half ago, what would be your dream
Right.
job? And he was helping install an exhibit. It was actually the Washington Street exhibit.
Yeah, the
And-
Avenue.
Yeah.
Somebody
And you
loved it,
said,
though.
I'd love to build a ship model from scratch. No one would ever engage me to do that. Of course, those were daring words. And so we settled on a project which took about a year, right?
Over a year.
Over a year.
Yeah.
And Frank built from scratch a model of the famous America. And that was a racing schooner, racing yacht.
Famous in yachting circles, yes.
Yep. And now hopefully refamous to Hoboken. Most people have forgotten about this, although the America's Cup is still a race and originates from that.
Right.
So I'm going to say you're an expert on this.
I'll accept it for this context.
Okay, definitely. And so tell us about some of the history of this vessel. And later, towards the end, we'll talk about a new project.
Right.
And we'll present the model as best we can on this screen. So tell me about the ship, the history, how it ties into the Stevens family.
Right, yeah. The Hoboken history is packed with personalities. The Stevens family rates pretty high. Most people have heard of it. The school's still on the hill. It bears the name, Stevens family. Bob told me about this opportunity to build a ship model, and the idea would be build a ship model in the public eye in the museum, and then choose as your subject a ship model that has a Hoboken backstory, that has a foot in Hoboken's history. And I knew right away it had to be the schooner yacht America, because I'm a ship nerd, and the other ship nerds they'll know that name. It's a famous name in yachting circles and in the history of sailing and the history of the sea, the schooner yacht America. And when I moved to Hoboken, I kind of thought like I'd find some comprehension around town. Like maybe at the library there'd be a picture over the desk of the schooner, or at City Hall there'd be a plaque or something. But there's very little. It's not on people's radar that there's this ship called the schooner yacht America, and the reason it's famous is because it wins the first America's Cup race. As I've been working on here in this room, actually, over the year and a half or so, building this model, I was talking to people coming up the stairs, explaining the story, and a lot of them had never heard of the America's Cup race, which is kind of, it sort of indicates people don't all understand the whole sailing world thing. But within that bubble of sailing world, there's this huge place for the America's Cup race. It's like the holy grail of sailing. It's a silver trophy that you get if you beat all the other competitors that are vying for it. It's as high as you can get in the yacht racing world, is to is to get that cup by winning it with your fast, speedy sailboat.
So this is the first winner of the America's Cup.
That's correct, yeah. And the ship was built by the New York Yacht Club, and they, almost as a stunt, almost as an in-your-face thing, there was a big yacht race in England. The Royal Yacht Squadron is the biggest in 1851 context, would be the team to beat. The Queen of England is a member. It's got all these people who are royals that are in the yacht club. So this American team builds this super yacht here in New York and calls it the America in a calculated, in-your-face, like, here we are, the Yankees are back. And I'm picturing John Cox Stevens, the principal Stevens personality involved in this. His father had fought the British in the Revolutionary War.
That's right.
So, his father was dead at that point, but like in 1851 when they had the race, there were people alive who could still remember that there was this.
Sure.
There was still some hard feelings,
Right.
So the idea that the Americans could come, this at the time, it's also hard to picture America compared to the America we have today, and then the America of 1851, pre-Civil War America, pre-Industrial Revolution America.
Yeah. So these are sailing vessels. They're not steam. They're not
Right.
anything else. And we were just looking at an elderly gentleman, very stately on the screen, who'll probably come back. Who's that?
That's the father, John. And I wrote down the date. He was born in 1749. He had 13 kids, right? John Cox Stevens, born in 1785. So that's his son. So he's out of the picture, but I wanted to have his picture up there because he's the guy who buys Hoboken and establishes the Stevens family in Hoboken, and also the everything that comes from that.
Sure.
The town itself. These people chose the name Hoboken. It's all because of the Stevens family.
Right. And so who's this?
That's John Cox Stevens.
And John Cox is the sailing.
He's the guy we'll be talking about him the most. Although his
Okay.
brother was there at the race too. Robert Livingston Stevens was
Right.
also there. One of his brothers was also a part of all this story. Their family grew up on the hill that was now where Stevens is, and there was a stone building that was called the Castle, and that's where we get the term Castle Point Terrace. It was the home these guys lived in. They grew up in.
Right. And they could just sort of look across the river and, check out the sailing vessels and
Right.
and dream about this project.
Right, and scheme, like that family was always trying to make money. They were developing Hoboken as a like an entertainment place for the New Yorkers to come over, get away from all the. You know the story better than I do.
No, you're doing fine.
They have like Sybil's Cave, for instance, as their invention, and it's a kind of come over here, give us a nickel, and then you can have this healthful water. And
Right.
So and somewhere in there is the first baseball game. That's 1840 something or another.
Circa.
Something. But that's right in the story. The story that we're talking about with the Stevens family, and we're transitioning into talking about the schooner yacht America. But there's this.
I'm sort of envisioning, like, what did you say? Colonel John had 13 kids.
Right.
And they're all sitting around the dinner table, kind of like competing, like who's got the coolest project.
Right.
And
They weren't
I
just
can
idle.
see
They weren't just
John
sitting around.
Cox just going, hey, I'm commissioned this great sailing vessel and we're going to compete in the America.
Well, first he creates the New York Yacht Club.
Oh, right.
so
So tell us a little more about that.
The New York Yacht Club.
Here's Pat Lombardi. Hey, Frank.
Hey.
You know Pat.
Hey, Pat, how are you, Pat?
Yeah.
I so enjoyed her talk. I watched it later. I didn't watch it live, but I did.
Okay.
I did. Yeah, she had so many humorous quips, and I'm sure she's got some right now that she could throw in.
Yeah, I'm a little careful what you might text.
Right.
Okay.
Anyway, this is a shot of the New York Yacht Club, and this is Hoboken. And you'll note the credit, Hoboken Historical Museum. I found it on the website. Visit the Hoboken Museum's website.
Right.
That's the original yacht club, and it looks like a fancy suburban garage almost. It's not a big deal.
It's not super, over the top. It's a wood frame structure with slight gingerbread Victorian motif.
It's
But,
the humble origin of the New York Yacht Club.
It's amazing. It's amazing.
There were only 2 other yacht clubs in the country at the time they fund this yacht club, and that's 1848, I want to say 1846 circa.
Okay.
46,
Sure.
right in there. What's coming up though is this exhibition in London, the Great Exhibition of 1851, and there is like yachting is discussed, and somehow the Hoboken Yacht Club, I'm sorry, the New York Yacht Club is on the radar of the Royal Yacht Squadron. And
Really?
there is a correspondence. Oh,
Melissa from the so great to have you tuning in. We missed you, Melissa.
we're trying to run the museum
And-
without you.
Yeah, yeah. So, but wait a second. We just saw this vintage photo.
Yeah,
Where
here we
is
are.
this?
This is the same building. So it's now like a treasured relic of the New York Yacht Club. They kept it, and they moved it a few places. It left Hoboken, I don't know when, but they kept it intact, and they would put it on a barge and move it originally to Staten Island, and then somewhere else on Long Island. And
Glen Cove.
Right. So now,
Melissa. We
But-
definitely miss you too.
but now it's in Rhode Island, and that's where the main base for the yachting capital of the world there, Narragansett Bay. It's a yachter's paradise. It's a huge sheltered harbor, and there's like mansions that overlook this. It's just gorgeous.
Sure.
So that's where that is now. But it started in Hoboken, and it's kind of funny that the building still exists. But it kind of shows that the yacht club is honoring its origins. You know, they're remembering the very beginnings in
Right.
Hoboken. And hopefully, if you went in that building, there'd be a plaque saying this is from Hoboken. I hope that they're remembering this. But
Right.
the thing is,
Kind of like Cooperstown and the birthplace of baseball. I wonder.
be
I
careful
wonder.
what you say,
Yeah,
right?
definitely.
Yeah, it's contentious. It's
Yeah,
contentious.
definitely.
So my point is like the people in Hoboken have forgotten this, that the yacht club is from Hoboken. And
Yeah.
I think it's probably true that the yacht club isn't advertising it, that Hoboken is the origin.
That's why I was
They're-
using
right.
the Cooperstown
Right.
analogy.
So there's this building is what they're honoring, but
Right.
like it's, I guess like Hoboken had sort of a working class, gritty. It was a point where the wealthy yacht club owners probably didn't want to remember Hoboken as being.
But things
the origin.
changed in the 1840s. It was more the Elysian Fields pastoral.
Exactly.
area,
It was a nice
but then it
place.
changed.
It did
It
change.
changed.
Right. And they pulled up stakes and they left. So
Right.
this was
Right.
really, they didn't come
And
back.
I guess we should say there is a building in Hoboken that is inspired by
Right.
this.
I wish I brought a slide of that too, but there's a building of, I'm not sure who built it, but it's down by the park, by the water there next to the Union Dry Dock.
It was
property.
Eric. I don't believe Cooperstown mentioned anything about Hoboken. Yeah, I'm actually going up to that neck of the woods next week, so I might
Oh,
take a
really?
peek and
Bring some stickers that
do
say
some-
Hoboken is the
yeah.
birthplace and stick it
Yeah,
on
I'll
things.
bring our postcards, which all say that, and put them in the rack. But again, the building in Hoboken is down by what's known as Maxwell Place, and it's on the waterfront.
Right, and it is a boathouse. That's where they keep the
They keep the
rowing club,
kayaks,
kayaks and things.
and,
And it has a roof line
It does.
that is a conscious wink at this building. So
Right.
there
And-
are people that do remember the yacht club in Hoboken.
Right, and
But
there
it-
is a historic plaque that makes that connection.
Right,
So,
right. So,
I'm
but I
sure.
think still though, there's a lot of people that just don't get this connection with the yacht club and Hoboken and the Stevens family.
And then it's called the New York Yacht Club,
Right,
which is
and that
like
was not
confusing
changed.
people.
Like the there were, I think, 7 original members of the yacht club, and they chose New York Yacht Club. It's New York Harbor that we're on here.
It's the New York, New Jersey harbor.
Well, I mean, maybe on
Come
some
on, you
charts.
should be rooting for the hometown team here at
It's
least.
New York Harbor. What am I going to tell you?
There's two sides.
It's the
There's
upper
two
harbor,
sides.
the
Yeah.
bay. Yes,
Okay.
right.
That's
But
the lower
They
Hudson.
chose to call it the New York Yacht Club. They didn't choose to call it the Hoboken Yacht Club. But we learned later, didn't we, that a Hoboken Yacht Club did spring up, and we have a Burgee downstairs, right?
Well, I think there's even a thing where the New York Yacht Club facility or building or location gets taken over by the New Jersey Yacht Club.
Oh,
Am
they,
I
like,
right on that?
it would be logical to like, hey, look, no
Yeah.
one's using this spot that's perfect for dragging boats. out
Right.
of
So
the
I
harbor.
think
So-
that happened. But
Right.
now we do have the Hoboken Yacht Club,
Right.
which is put together by Joe Barry and has a staff, and they have
And they race.
sailing boats
And
and,
they race,
racing and developing it. And they just installed a flagpole with which flies the Burgee.
Nice.
What's a Burgee again?
A Burgee, I think it's an Indian word for a type of flag, but in the yachting context, it's the identity flag of your yacht club. Each one's different, and you can design your own, so they're not like based on a national flag. Often there's an anchor, And the later the yacht club, the weirder the burgee, because all the good designs like stars and anchors and mermaids and dolphins, they all get used first in the 1800s. And then, like, if you're starting your yacht club now, you have to have a distinct burgee that's different from everybody else's. So now there's a lot of kooky designs and weird colors.
Interesting. So, oh my
Here's
God.
the New York Yacht Club.
So
today.
this is not the inside of the building that we're just looking at.
This is on 44th Street in Manhattan, and this is a private club. You can't go in there unless you have an invitation. You can walk in the front door, but you can't go into this room, the model room. On the walls, if depending on your monitor, the walls are covered with these little rectangular shapes, and those are ship model halls, because all the members of the yacht club will eventually have one of their yachts that they sail in have a model of it enshrined in the model room. So
is there space for new ones?
I don't know what their policy is. I think there's a little space right up there.
I know it's going to cost you whatever it is.
Yeah, I'm glad that there's money for ship model builders coming from somewhere, right?
Is there a gift shop in this place? Or?
There is not. It's I guess you can rent this for like a wedding or something, maybe. Right. And they do have tours, somewhat circa end of the month. But when I tried to get a tour, I was unable to recently. So
you probably said Hoboken, and they said you're out of here.
Right? You probably think that baseball's from Cooperstown. But they've been on the top of the heap of the yachting world forever. There was a certain point in the history of the United States after the Stevens family where other giant, you think of the huge robber baron millionaires.
JP.
They all wanted to belong to the yacht club because it was a status symbol then. So right. The yacht clubbing, I think, probably started amongst wealthy people because there was no middle class. Just owning a yacht in the 1850s would have indicated that you had free time and money to spend. So it was probably always a little bit of a rich man's sport, but like it really came into being a huge thing for wealthy people later. And there's probably members now who don't really sail very much, but are members because of the panache that it gives, or the social entrees into other worlds that you get. The connections people you could add to your Rolodex would be. Really powerful people are in this room.
For some reason, I'm most impressed with that rug. It's so big.
It doesn't have any nautical thing on it, too. There's no anchors. No
right.
Nothing.
What do you think? It's like 100 feet? I mean,
it's pretty big.
Pretty big. Wide angle lens, but still.
ABC carpet, you think?
It's
not from Cooperstown.
So. And those American flags look like minuscule by the fireplace.
Right. Those are probably full size.
But it's so cool, that fireplace with I don't know, what do I say, sturgeon motifs, and looks like the back of a, frigate or something.
Yeah, the outside of the building has those same kind of it's a building, but we're going to make it look like a ship, and it's covered with Nereids, which are the male mermaids with the tridents.
Sure. Oh yeah,
and like windows that are shaped like the bay windows on the back of a ship.
Right,
it's a lovely building.
I love buildings that reflect their purpose,
and you couldn't build anything like this today. It's not sure. It's another era. But it's on 44th Street. Go in if you have never. You can walk in the front door and they'll tell you to leave.
You could ask to use the bathroom, maybe.
Maybe, but if you do walk in this is like the end of the lecture, but there is a fragment of the actual America that's in that room that you walk into.
Holy Grail.
When you step in off the street, there's the eagle from the stern. We'll talk about that later.
Sure. Okay.
So where were we now? I'm all over the map.
Well, no, we're doing fine.
Okay.
What's this flag? What's the significance?
Most people will recognize this flag who've been on a boat before because it's the yacht ensign. So in America, the Coast Guard wants you to have an ensign showing what country you're from. And you can use the American flag, or you can fly your yacht ensign. You're allowed to use the yacht ensign as the American flag if you're on a boat. But the origin story of this is a John Cox Stevens invention. So John Cox Stevens, roll it back to 1840, before the yacht race. He forms the yacht club with his buddies. They find that when they sail to another nearby city on the East Coast, they're expected to pay the harbor dues that you would pay if you were bringing freight into the harbor, like a local tax. And they would argue that, well, I'm a pleasure boater, I don't want to pay a tax. And the people would say, what's a pleasure boater? Because it just hadn't been invented yet. You weren't getting people. So a need arose to have a distinctive flag that would mark your yacht or your pleasure boat as being distinct and not subject to a tax. So John Cox Stevens, I don't know if he did it on the back of an envelope or what. He's the one who invents this. And when I was researching the ship model, I was reading about Stevens, and this was one of the things that popped up, and I was like, I can't believe that's him too, because again, this is one of those things where you've never been a boater. It's so what, who cares story. But if you're on boats and are salty, this is a surprise. Like John Cox Stevens did this too, because I mean, maybe this would be his most famous thing if he didn't do anything else.
Right. And knowing you, these are the type of things you think about.
Yeah, I love finding a little detail like this. This is what makes like reading about a historical character. I never read biographies, but like if you dig in, there are these amazing
Right.
little tidbits, little
we're
details.
lucky you did it, because again, the Burgee thing is new to me.
I guarantee you,
And I kind of thought it was like a Ralph Lauren design or something.
Yeah, it's been co-opted since then.
Yeah,
sure.
everyone has this on their beach bag.
Yeah, it's hanging on their back porch and stuff. It's everywhere.
That's
everywhere.
Very
but it's
cool.
a John Cox Stevens invention.
I like it.
So that leads us. Did we cover everything?
So we should mention our background here. What can you tell us? We're obviously looking at a painting by
Fitzhugh Lane painting, and he was a contemporary. So that painting was a painting done after the race, and this is a painting he did of the race, and that's his painting of the America during the race. So a lot of people feel that this one's pretty close to an accurate representation, but it's the era before photography mostly, so we don't really have a lot of great agreement. Fortunately, we do have, this is more in terms of talking about the ship model and the research for the model itself. There's a lot of documentation about the race, because the race became a huge thing in international news at the time. The idea that the Americans would come, well, let me start over. Picture England. Britannia rules the waves. They've got a maritime empire that spans the world, and they always have. They used to own the United States because they had this great navy. They've undefeated at sea. They've got a long, list of admirals that have won battles as long as your arm. They've got, they own maritime history. They're considered to be the world's greatest sailors. So the idea that an American yacht comes and wins a race against them, with the Queen watching in broad daylight, like it becomes like a huge deal. Like everybody's yelling, "Stop the presses!" and all of Europe like turns and looks, and suddenly it's the New York Yacht Club is on page one now. Like
wow.
Their idea probably was to have publicity, and boy, did they get it.
Right.
And they sell the yacht right away. Their whole intention, the Stevens family, it's all about like, how can we make some money? Their idea was to treat it originally as like you would if you had a prized racehorse. You're going to place bets on your horse to win, and you're going to race it. And they were hoping to win all this money doing these racing endeavors in England. But what happened was, before they had the big race, the 1851 America's Cup race, they raced against one English guy, and they beat him so soundly that he kind of told everybody else, like, the American yacht is outrageous. We can't beat this yacht. So it was a little bit of a scandal for a minute there when they were trying to decide, like, maybe we can find a rule that says the Americans can't be in the race because this is an English race. And they did actually talk about this, but they said, no, we're gonna have this race for that cup, and it's open to all contenders. And I don't know enough about the history of yacht racing to know if we had international yacht racing before this. I tend to think that the Royal Yacht Squadron was mostly racing against other British yacht clubs.
So the British ships were also kind of privately owned and
right, they were yachts too.
It was not the Queen's.
Well, the Queen she was there.
She's there,
and she has a yacht, but it's not a racing yacht. I don't think it was considered proper for the Queen to be racing. I think she's about 35 at this point, circa 35.
Rope burn or
so,
okay,
right?
And
it is that Queen Victoria, the one.
Isn't it? Yeah, who lived to be like 100 years.
She was the longest reigning monarch until, I don't know, modern times, but long time in the
Victorian age.
The Victorian age, right.
Queen Victoria,
which spans like this pre-industrial revolution and then through into what we think of now as like modern times.
Sure. Isn't there a famous quote, whether it's true or not, while she's watching the race? She turns to one of her associates and says,
wait. now it's like I can't remember the punchline of the joke, but there's apocryphal stories associated with big historic events, and the one for this race is the story about the Queen being perplexed at the end of the race, asking, because apparently it's kind of cloudy and they can't see who's coming in at the finish line.
That makes sense.
And she's asking, like, well, who is that? And who's going to win the race? And she's told that it's the Americans, and she's obviously crestfallen. It's really going to reflect poorly on her yacht club and maybe her whole nation. Who knows? The whole British culture is now it's bad news for her. So she quickly says, well, who's second? And this is the famous quote, is there is no second, meaning that the yacht, when it came around the corner and came into view, was so far ahead of the pack that there was nobody else behind her.
Gotcha.
I mean, obviously there were. And I should add, there's an argument or disagreement about like how many minutes elapsed before the second place winner came in. And that's between 8 minutes or 48 minutes, depending on your source. So some people say it was right behind, but at 8 minutes, even like if you take the shortest interval, that's still like you soundly won that race.
Light years.
Yeah.
Definitely.
8 minutes waiting for the next boat to come along. You're like, wow, that American boat really sailed.
And
fast.
just to put it in context, the America Cup race still happens.
It still happens, yeah. What happens is the consortium that owns the yacht, including the Stevens family, they own now the cup outright, and they take it away from England back to presumably right here to Hoboken. The yacht club's
Did
here.
you ever
There's
find documentation?
There's lapses in the documentation, and I'm not a historian. I'm just
Right.
I'm a ship model guy that wants to read about the background. We do know that it was in the possession of the New York Yacht Club until 1986. So they keep it, not because they're not racing. They keep racing and they keep winning.
Really?
What happens is, your question was like, well, when's the next race that they have? What happens is the Stevens family brings it home. There's 5 owners of the ship. A couple of years go by, and they're like, should we chop the cup up and give an equal amount of silver to each person? And then
Really? No.
They actually consider that. And they said, no, we're gonna risk it again. We'll say that if you want to race for the cup again, you can get it back.
Right.
But you have to come here because we had to go there to beat you. So you're going to have to come to New York, come to where the yacht club who currently owns the cup. That becomes part of the rules of the yacht race. And what they are inventing at the same time is what is now considered the oldest athletic event that's international. So there's other, like there's the Olympics, but they weren't continuously run, and it wasn't always the same rules. And but like if you want to like try to stick a pin in the map, where's the oldest historic sporting event? It's this America's Cup race, and it becomes this ongoing race. I'm putting it again with the Stevens. Like, we're going to invent the idea that this cup doesn't just belong to us. We're just custodians of it until the next.
So I just want to make sure I get it. Let's say the next year a challenger comes from Australia and they win it.
Then you have to give them the cup.
You give them the cup.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
and that's
it's like tag you're
and
in.
it's
it
the
just
same.
Keeps changing.
It's the same cup all these years. So
Really?
it's about 28 inches high. There's a picture of the cup if we go through all the slides.
Right. We'll get there. We'll get there.
It's but the idea that they're inventing the idea of an ongoing athletic event. Now we take things like that for granted. Like, of course, we got the Stanley Cup, we got the Heisman Trophy for the Super Bowl.
Right.
There's a bunch of sports that have a cup associated with it, a trophy. But this is the oldest and the first.
The oldest.
And it's because they decided to. They didn't need to do that.
And I'm going to imagine there's sort of betting involved within
yeah.
certain circles.
Yeah. And litigation.
Litigation.
Like right away. I didn't go too deep
and
into
spying on the other countries that are entering.
It becomes a very jealously sought after thing to have to say that you won it.
Right.
So these people really want it, and they go to great lengths.
Right. I could be going out there on a limb, but I believe the Davidson Laboratory, which is here in Hoboken,
Bring it back to
was
Davidson,
involved with, they do the hull design there, and, they have a float tank where they can sort of find how a hull will deal with waves and so on. Right. I believe they did work on other countries' America's Cup, which is kind of interesting.
Right.
They could have been competing against the U.S., and then there's the history part.
Right. And I'm jumping on this as an opportunity to talk more about the Stevens family history. There were 7 sons. I think it was the 3rd son who lives the longest, and he's the one who bequeaths the land and money to create the Stevens Institute of Technology.
Okay, that would be Edwin A.
Right. So he, like the land that the school is on now is only because he said, instead of selling it for a profit or whatever, I'm going to give it as
and some funds,
and some money.
He dies before the school opens. And,
only a year or so, though.
Right, but Martha is the one who really steps in.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so let's give her a little
Yeah,
pick.
I always feel guilty because when I talk about the Stevens family and I say there's 13 kids and there's 7 boys, I never mention any of the women.
Right. Well, Martha was married to Edwin.
Yeah, but still, like, give the women their due. They're part of the story. Right?
Of course. We love Martha. Okay. So what do we got? We're going to segue into the race itself.
This was the race. This is a map of the Isle of Wight, and it's right on the southern coast of England. So if you think of the giant map of England, there's this little channel called the Solent that separates the Isle of Wight from the mainland, and the nearest town is Portsmouth, and that's the main naval base of the Royal Navy, and it always has been. That's where you go to see like the HMS Victory and all those things that, if you're a nerd like me. But it's about 50 miles, that dotted line that surrounds the whole thing.
50 miles.
Yeah, they start at I want to point at the map, but nobody can see it. Right? At the top of the map is the northernmost point of the diamond-shaped dotted line all the way around the island.
Right.
That's where they start, and then they go clockwise around.
Oh, interesting.
And there was a little controversy about, on the right-hand side, there's a thing called the Nab Light that you see there.
Yeah.
There, it marks like where there's some shoals or some rocks. So traditionally, when they had that race, the British people would sail on the outside of that, but the schooner Yacht America sails on the inside of that. And there was protests later. And protests at yacht events is no surprise. It's just an ongoing part of any yacht race. They actually have a special flag you can fly when you want to protest on your yacht. Like when you see something that your opponent did that you don't like, you fly the protest flag, and the judges on shore with
What's
their
that
binoculars,
look like?
I don't even know.
Okay.
Just
Like skull and crossbones.
But like they make a little mark. At this point on the race, there was a protest flag, and then later they argue.
Okay.
And this whole later they argue thing is a big part of the history of yacht racing.
Establish there's a concern.
But they race all the way around. There's the actual cup, which is taller in this picture than it used to be. They added a ring to the bottom, much like the Stanley Cup and I think also the Heisman Trophy. They keep adding names, so they've run out of space, so they add another ring. And it's gotten taller since then. There's another ring on the bottom now since this one.
So who won the last America's Cup?
The most recent one was, I think, Rand, and I talked about this earlier, didn't we, Rand?
New Zealand?
It's New Zealand.
So that means the cup is in New Zealand?
Right. It would physically go there. And,
Right.
if you want to talk about the New York Yacht Club on 44th Street, they have in a corner of one of the rooms a parquet floor or inlaid.
Yeah.
And there's a circular design in one. And the circle
That's
is
where the cup
the size
goes.
of the base of this cup.
Okay.
And that is where the cup will go if they ever win it back. But they
Right.
just have not been able to win
So
it
I'm a
back.
little obsessed with this. So would they bring the cup to the race and hand
Probably.
it to the
I think
Australians
I've
then
seen
or
enough,
whoever?
When you Google, the image of the cup, you can see a lot of instances where they show, people raising it up and spraying champagne, but also like a tent city with like a table with flowers, and there's the cup there too. So I think like on shore at the yacht club, they will be displaying the cup.
Wow.
The inner sanctum people can go in and see.
Sure. So that is an artifact for sure.
Yeah, and nobody outside the yachting world really seems to have any recognition of it. When I was up here working on the ship model, people would come upstairs, I'd talk about this story, and I'd mention the America's Cup race and the America's Cup, and I'd look to see if they're going to
glint in their eye.
and a lot of them like.
There is one guy up here who I think is involved with the Hoboken Yacht Club. He came with his son, and you were so gratified to meet him because you were speaking the same language.
Right, because it's a world that a lot of people just don't take an interest in, and you can't blame them. I mean, it's what are you going to do? You can't be involved in every human endeavor, but the whole sailing thing. And Hoboken's got this waterfront and maritime history.
Yeah.
And this is a huge part of that story, but it just seems to have been glossed over. Now, to the credit of the museum, you've got in that book 100 Hoboken First, there's the yacht club is mentioned and the America's Cup race is mentioned.
But really involving you was our way to kind of connect with this project.
Yeah, I was very grateful.
And
When the origin story of the project, Bob alluded to it. We're driving in the car because we're picking up something to schlep back because we're putting together the exhibit. And we talk about, I don't know, I'm just like spinning daydreams. Like, wouldn't it be nice to work in a museum and build a ship model? And I wasn't like,
You weren't
fishing
serious?
for a project or something.
Okay.
But then Bob's like later, a week or two later, it springs it on me.
Right,
Like, how
right.
would you like to build a model?
Yep.
And then we had to decide which one. And there was other historic ships. There was the Leviathan.
Sure.
The
Ocean liner.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it's part of Hoboken history.
Right. I
Hoboken
think you
nautical
picked
history.
a great project.
This is
a
the
great
better one.
ship.
It would have been hard to build.
Let's get into describing we have a few more image for the historical, but we got to get into contemporary.
Yeah, how are we doing here?
We're
spent
doing
like a half an
fine,
hour.
but,
well, to quickly wrap up, they sell the yacht right there, and an English guy buys it because it's now the most fastest boat in the world.
Right.
Everybody wants to own it because it's it's this like it's just demonstrated that it could beat the British. So an English guy buys it, but then he has to scrub the name off it. He can't be an English guy in a boat called America.
What's it called?
He changes the name to his wife's name. I think it's called the Irene, I believe.
Okay.
It changes hands a few times. It doesn't see a lot of action because in the following America's Cup yacht races, I think it participates in the next one, which is years later. But it's already outclassed because the bar has now been raised because of this, the New York Yacht Club deciding that we didn't talk too much about the whole concept of designing a yacht to go fast.
Right.
I think why the British lost is their yachts were designed to be pleasurable, fun boats to sail around it, and probably based on their coasting fishing craft, which are designed to haul cargo and survive in heavy seas.
Sure.
Not to go fast.
Right.
So this was built, I'm pointing at the model, which you guys can't see. It's right off.
It's coming up.
Here.
It's coming up.
It's
the big tease.
It's designed by a guy named George Steers, and he's a young man. He's in his 30s, and he's designing the best yachts. And I think it's because he's free to do whatever he wants to. He hasn't been constrained by a tradition, which again is working against the boat builders in Europe and overseas. So he designs a boat that's very pointy in front, and its thickest point is in the back. And this upset people. A lot of people felt like, no, the front has to be wide, like apple cheek, they call the term.
Huh.
You can't have it pointy. It's going to dive into the waves and it's going to sink right away. They literally didn't know that this thing would, but it actually, now it's really easy to understand that if it's really pointy and sharp in front, it's going to go through the water faster.
Right.
This seems like, duh, of course it does. But back then they were thinking, no, it has to be bulbous in front because otherwise the water rushes in.
Sure.
So George Steers, thinking outside the box, designs this thing, and that's why it's faster.
So what happens to it?
Well, it goes through several hands. It comes back to the United States, but it's on the wrong side of the Civil War, which is in 1846, I guess, right? No,
1860s.
1860s, yeah.
Circa
1860s. So it's only like a decade later. And the Confederacy needs blockade runners because their cities are being blockaded by the Union Army or the Navy. So they need small, fast craft. So she's doing, it's all right. It's part of the story.
Sure.
But by the time World War II runs around, the U.S. Navy decides that they're going to get into the war pretty soon, and we have to build up our Navy and have a much bigger Navy. All the ships that we have doing the harbor duties, we're going to need to move to other parts of the world to be more aggressive. So we're going to need to fill that void by commandeering all these pleasure boats that the people already have. So they were just like taking yachts away from people. A lot of times the patriotic people were donating them. But somebody donated the Yacht America to the U.S. Navy, and that's where she stayed. She was in the U.S. Navy. They used her like for cadet training, and that's about it. And she spent the war under a shed with her mast taken off. Wooden shed was built over because the Navy knew she was historic.
Right.
There was a big snowstorm, and the shed collapsed and smashed the hull, and that's what you see in this picture.
Okay.
So at that point, they pried the wooden eagle off the stern, and the tiller, which is the steering column thing that you steer the boat with, and that's the eagle. So if you go to 44th Street in New York City,
if you can get in,
you can see this just by walking in the front door before they turn you around.
Okay.
Over the head of the guy at the desk is this eagle. So you can go in and see that eagle. And, and it's the eagle that the Queen saw go by in 1851 with the race. It's the same eagle.
With the American shield.
Yeah.
So you're saying this vessel went from 1851 to the 1940s?
It's remarkable because nowadays if you build a wooden boat, you can't expect more than like 40 or 50 years out of it. And that's what
so it's like double the life.
It had a very long life. And you got to give it up to George Steers and that shipyard that he worked at.
Sure. Which is actually in Brooklyn, right?
It's in New York,
Okay, it wasn't built here?
It was not. It was not in Hoboken. And this is a dirty little secret. Cover your ears.
Sure you want to tell it?
We don't know if it was ever in Hoboken because the yacht was built on the East River. There's a newspaper account from the time that you can look on the internet yourself. You can just Google that day. And they give a description, and they also include that it's going to leave on this date and sail directly to France.
Wow.
So it doesn't say it's going to leave here and first have a little champagne toast in Hoboken. which is what I think they would have done, and then sail the next day. But it's saying it departed right from that point and then left to go to England.
I wish you hadn't said that.
I'm
just
trying to
kidding.
be honest.
So, but we do know the Stevens family were one of the main financial backers.
Yeah, and two people
were
were
in the race.
They were on board for the race. They were not on board for the crossing, so they got a more comfortable crossing.
Well, they took a plane, right?
But George Steers. Oh, Melissa's.
Okay.
I'm glad
Thank you, Melissa.
My little digression.
Someone loves the details.
What was I going to say? George Steers is on the crew going across.
Okay.
And one of the son of one of the Stevens. No, I have that wrong. Anyway, I'm going down a rabbit hole.
You were there.
Well, I was reading about the manifest exists. You can actually see you can see the photograph of their signatures and their names.
Nice.
And there was like some weird argument about the drinking of the wine during the trip across. We could go into that, or we could just gloss over it. But there was some hard feelings. Some Stevens family members had provisioned the boat for when they were going to be aboard in Europe, in England. But then they took a cushier packet boat across and not sailing across on the little schooner, which would be a rough
Gotcha.
voyage. But then somebody on the crossing broke into those stores and was eating them, drinking them. And then there was like harsh words afterwards.
Okay. Jean-Paul Picard.
Time for the ship.
Thank you, Jean-Paul.
Some of us are team details, and some of us are like, let's cut to the chase.
So
you're both right.
We're going to go into the ship model project, which was pretty interesting. Again, Frank was in the museum on Saturdays for over a year, and it was great to have you here during that time.
Thank you.
For sure, it was great to hear your voice and your tools and so on and so on. So let's look at some visuals, which will help show the process that you did.
Ship modeling is a terrific hobby.
And we're going to sort of speed dial this a little bit.
So we can skip this one, but this is this is the drawings that I was working from. A guy named Howard Chappell was in the Smithsonian Institution, and he did this research on the hull shape. He did tremendous research on a lot of hulls, and a lot of ship modelers owe him a great debt because without his drawings, like you can see the drawing on the upper right that looks like a sailboat, but really it's the drawing on the left and those squiggly drawings that are just more like a schematic. Those are very accurate. There are tables of offsets where people have measured the actual hull and written down all these numbers, columns of numbers, like a spreadsheet. Each one of these grid-like lines on there where the intersections are, there's numbers that correspond to measurements they took off the actual ship. So the vertical lines on the bottom drawing are called station lines, and each one of those corresponds to a certain point on the hull. And then each one of those lines has a set of numbers that could describe the arcs that are shown in the hourglass-looking or wine-glass-looking drawing that's sort of in the middle near the fold there.
Yeah.
So, if you go to the next picture,
all pre-computer,
right? It's like before computers. If you had what happened in the old days, if you had a fast-sailing ship, it was usually because you had an intuitive understanding, not computer-aided, because before computers, right? There was no science of sailing or the hull construction. But if your hull was the wrong shape, it wouldn't go as fast. If you had a ship that was going fast, you would want to record the hull and copy it. So they had a method of measuring all those things, and that's why we have those numbers today and can speak confidently that we have a model that's accurate.
Wow, and all those dimensions change, because it's kind of undulated, the form of the hull.
The table of offsets, when you see it, it's like a huge column of numbers that's like 30 columns high, and somebody went to the actual ship and measured against the wall to see how the distance was.
And this is wood. It's not, it's all got to be planed down and conform to the measurement.
Right. We're kind of like straddling this era where it was the rule of thumb and then it's science. And I think the Stevens family falls in there too, because again, they've got that the hydrodynamic testing lab and stuff like that because of the Stevens. Prior to that, nobody was testing hulls and they were just eyeballing it.
Yep. So this is in the upper gallery. You're looking pretty happy, and you're using that schematic to sort of use as a template for the hull design.
Right. This is an important step. I am clamping together the wood and gluing it, and that's what that clamp is. I've got 9 planks of poplar, which I bought at the nearby Home Depot.
Yeah, this is not a kit.
It's not a kit.
People think, where can I buy the America's Model kit?
Well, there are kits out there. You
Right,
can,
but
but this one
you
was
did
this
not
was
take that
scratch built.
approach.
Yeah, this was a scratch built ship, and the idea is you get your accurate drawings, because without them you can't really have confidence that you're making a real representation.
Right.
So it's all about really good reference material, and because this ship was so famous in its day, there's very little that's questioned about what it looked like. It's really well covered. You know,
I like this photo because it shows what exhibit we had downstairs,
Right,
upper
that
gallery,
was-
and we can check out what the time it was, because you
Yeah.
took your time pretty seriously.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is
And-
that block of wood.
Yeah.
And
so
on
a
the-
little further along than the previous shot.
Right, and you can see I've got a full-size black and white photocopy of the drawings, and the red lines on there are those station lines, and on the hull you can see there's these pencil lines with numbers. Each one of those it corresponds to one of the red lines on that black and white drawing. So if you go to the next picture, each one of those station lines has its corresponding line on the drawing that looks like a wine glass. So I'm holding in my hand there E, which you can imagine I'm going A, B, C, D, E. So that's frame E, and it's that shape and that shape only. And that should fit the hull only on the E on the drawing, on the
Right.
on the piece of wood. So,
So you would actually sort of dip it on, place it on top,
right.
and
I
see
take
if
a little.
it-
I take a little wood off, and
Yeah.
then I would compare it to the
Right.
that template.
and careful not to take too much off.
Right, exactly, yeah, and I have to do that for each one of the station lines. So
Yeah,
there
and you
dozens
have to describe to people who are visiting what you're
of
doing.
what I was doing the whole time too.
Oh my
yeah,
God.
yeah.
Oh my
But
God.
that's how you arrive at translating the two-dimensional drawing into a three-dimensional, like CAD, but organically, like
the map,
analog.
the map process.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Wow.
And that's the bow
Sure.
fitting in before the keel on the model would be attached. And this is the best picture I had of the hull before I started doing anything, after I had finished sanding it and smoothing it. And I painted it green because in the old days, and still today to somewhat, you copper the hull. Now they use copper paint, but
Now they use
there's
fiberglass.
well, you still have to keep the marine growth from sticking to the hull because it'll
Okay.
slow it down. And also there were these marine boring worms, the teredo worm, which would enter the hull and then stay inside the ship eating the wood, and the ship would just crumble and fall
Just
apart.
like the Hoboken Piers.
Right, exactly. The same critter. It's
Yeah.
the teredo worm. Yeah. So someone a long time ago discovered that they don't like the taste of copper. Copper sulfide's a poison. So if you
Interesting.
nail copper to your hull, it will prevent the teredo worm. So ship model builders will get actual little copper plates and glue them onto the hull. But I always felt like it's too thick. Even the thinnest copper you're going to find is still too
Sure.
to stay in scale. So it's artfulness.
Right.
So I don't believe that because it's copper on the ship, it has to be copper on the model.
I got you. Well, you're the captain, so you decide.
I add that because there could be some ship model builders who are listening to this.
Are you worried about that?
No, but I know they're laughing because it's this ongoing argument about like, do I have
Sure.
I have to do this because it's made out of this? And I'm like,
Right.
no, it's
Just
the
fly
ends-
the Burgee flag, and you can,
It's your ship.
call the
Build it-
shot. It's
build it your way.
Your ship.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that
Who is going to
overriding-
build this ship?
Oh, there's a lot. This is a very popular subject. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, in ship modeling, the most popular one is the Constitution, the USS
Sure.
Constitution.
Yeah.
Because it still exists and there's really good documentation. And
Right.
it has this American backstory.
So could a group come together to sort of share, like in a sense, do a critique of your model and
Oh, they
bring
could,
their own
yeah.
model? Should
Oh,
we
yeah.
have a little
They have
America
the
ship
closest-
model conference or?
I would love to see it. They have there's a ship model society of Northern New Jersey, and they meet in Millburn, New Jersey.
Okay, that's not
once
far.
a month. Yeah, I used to go to their meetings. There's some really good, talented modelers.
I think we should reach out maybe in the winter, have
Right.
a little clutch.
have them come over here.
Yeah.
Or they can have their meetings here, right?
Yeah.
Be careful
No.
what you wish for. Is what I'm
No, I
saying.
know. Well,
They're nice
one
guys.
meeting is fine.
Right. Well, hobbyists, there's a thing about hobbyists. We work alone in the basement, and sometimes we don't have good social skills. I'm just saying.
Well, you're not one of them.
Well.
Anyway, okay, we're into details. So rigging is
Right.
part of it.
Rigging is my
Again,
favorite
not
part.
from a kit.
Right,
You
yeah.
are kind of analyzing the knots used and where the lines do and
Right.
their purposes.
If we could just talk about me for a little while.
That's what we've been doing.
No, I have always loved sailing ships, but then I actually started volunteering at the South Street Seaport Museum in New York.
Sure.
And they have 2 schooners there.
Yeah.
And they do need to maintain them. So the volunteers there, and I recommend everybody to volunteer at museums. First, the Hoboken Historical Museum. But after that, maybe you want to try the South Street Seaport Museum, where they have a schooner, the Pioneer, built in 1885.
Right.
Still there. You
Sure.
can go work on it.
Yeah.
And their goal is to try to make it look the way it looked,
Sure.
there's not anything modern on there. So I'm accustomed to the whole rigging aspect. Like, schooners are rigged the way they're rigged today as they were in the 1850s, because
Right.
they kind of refined the best way to do it in the old days, because the ships that didn't do it as well weren't as profitable, or maybe they sailed away and didn't come back because the rigging wasn't good enough. There was this slow, long period of refinement that very rarely would they change anything.
Right.
But what we have now today is this distilled perfection, where the rigging, everything on the ship is like doing exactly the right thing. It has a name. There's a right way to do it. And if you volunteer at a museum or something like that, where they actually have the real thing, you learn this stuff. And
Sure.
So I kind of get an advantage as a modeler, because I've actually done rigging. I've rigged ships. I've
Right.
up-rigged them. I've down-rigged them.
But
and
the-
it's my favorite part of the model is
Yeah.
the rigging.
Sure.
Most
No.
ship modelers, they don't like the rigging. They want to
Okay.
work on the wood part of the hull.
Sure.
And then they hate to do the rig.
Right.
And I'm the opposite, because the rigging
Okay.
is so
Wow. And
Fascinating.
we were talking before, they were known as dead eyes.
dead eyes.
And
yeah,
the
there's-
rigging would go through them.
Right, there's match pairs, and what happens is you have to have like if you picture a big antenna, you drive down the highway, you see an antenna, there's these guy wires holding it straight.
Sure.
You think of that as standing rigging. They're keeping it standing. And ships have standing rigging. It's just to keep there's 2 kinds of rigging on a ship. The stuff that you pull on to make it move, and there's standing rigging that's in place to keep it from not moving. And the
Right.
masts have shrouds, 2 shrouds on each side in this case. And they come down to the deck, but they don't actually meet and touch each other. They have these pairs of dead eyes that oppose each other. You'll notice there's 3 holes in each one of the dead eyes.
Yep.
And then there's a lanyard that runs through all 6 holes. So you can pull the lanyard tight so you can adjust the tension.
Right.
So that's the point of the dead eyes. Like in the old days, that rigging could expand and contract with temperature and humidity. And so the mast might be more bendy one day than the next. And you don't want that. So if you can adjust it, you would put those lanyards in place, and then you can keep the tension.
Hence the standing.
Right.
Right.
It's standing rigging.
Cool.
Yeah. So all ships have them.
Oh, my favorite part.
The little guys. Yeah.
Yeah.
The little figures.
This looks like they're having a great time.
Yeah.
So what are they made out of?
They're wire. And,
Okay.
and like a quick aside, there's another school of thought that says like you shouldn't have figures on a ship model. It's gaudy or it's toy-like.
It's so
I
great for
always
scale.
feel like, yeah, I disagree. I think like if you put a figure on, like you can have a schooner that's 60 feet long or 100 feet long, and they look the same sailing by. In a photograph, they look the same, and you don't know how big they are unless you
Sure.
see a person standing there, and then
Right.
you get a sense of the scale. So for a model to have the figure on the deck, it tells the viewer how high,
Right.
how tall everything.
And as I remember, you did them, but then you didn't like them, and you changed them a little or something. What happened there?
I made them and didn't install them because like my process is I make all the things I'm going to put on the deck individually, and then I put them on the deck all at once. So
Right.
these guys were done and sitting in the box for a long time, and every once in a while people would come upstairs. I'd open the box and say, "And here's the little figures that you're going to see later," and they do and all.
They love them.
They are made out of wire, and they're about 1.5 inches tall for the scale for this model.
Right.
Which let's not talk about the scale because we never did the math. But it is in scale. Anyway, these are they're covered with acrylic modeling paste, which is like spackle if you've used any kind of like home,
Sure.
painting your apartment or something. And then over that is wet tissue paper, which I've already painted. So I've made it a few different colors of tissue paper, painted it with thin paint, let it dry, and then Eric
The
Kemmer,
little
the
guy.
guy.
Wait till you
The
see him
crew.
on the ship. Yeah.
I was able to glue little patches of the fabric onto the figures, and then because it's tissue paper, it has wrinkles in it,
Right.
so it sort of fools your eye into thinking.
But it's
that
just great
actual
to include
clothing.
the human element for sure.
Yeah, I think you
on
got to
there.
have it. I don't.
Sure.
When I'm a little disappointed in any model that you don't see a figure on it.
Right. Right. And are we done with images, do you think?
Rand, are we done? Was that
Yeah.
all the images? Oh, okay.
Okay.
So
Drum roll, please.
Yeah.
So really, we want people to come visit this. It's now on permanent display. in the
Yeah.
upper gallery. We ordered a
It's
beautiful
museum quality now.
That's right, museum property and quality, and it's in a protective plexi box that was ordered.
Right, yeah.
And
There's a
I'm going
mini
to
side
scoot it
in
around.
itself.
Again, this is not really the medium to see it. You should
Yeah.
experience it. And I'm putting this over the microphone. And we don't really have a way to really change the detail. Remember, we said we're going to try to line it up.
Oh,
the
yeah,
paint?
with the
No,
painting
it's
in the
other
background.
way.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
cool. So
Not
we're
bad,
getting
yeah,
some
pretty
digital
Somewhere
stuff
there.
going on with the
Yeah,
green
there's
screen.
an odd reflection
But
happening. there.
here's
Yeah.
Vera. Vera hung in there. It's so exciting.
Right,
It is
yeah.
exciting.
So these are signal flags, and
right.
they spell out the word Hoboken.
Really?
So that's a little Easter egg in there.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's pretty cool. And then
Oh,
it's hard to see the drama which is going on.
Yeah, I
forward.
forgot the story of the broken.
Go for
part.
it. You
Yeah,
still
yeah,
can
yeah.
get that in there.
Yeah, if we move, can we move the bow up so they can
think
see
we
the bow?
can.
Oh wait, the
I
bow's
just-
on that side.
let's-
Yeah, the guys up on the front there.
There we are.
You can see that the very tip, which is right over Bob's eye,
Yeah.
is
Ouch.
kind of
Okay.
like broken off, right? Because on deck they have the guys who are holding this stick here.
Right?
They're holding the bowsprit, which broke off during the race.
Right. So
the-
that actually
The
happened.
story is that the captain of the
I
ship.
think I got it. You, can
You
go.
got it.
Yeah.
You would have seen if you were paying really close attention that there were two of these triangular sails on the front of the ship model in the drawings, and they were at the start of the race. At the start of the race, they had put a second headsail on, two different jibs, and the idea was you had like another piece of wood that came out further, and it did the same thing as this piece of wood. And you could have another line like this with another sail on it, which they did. And the captain said, "Don't do it. That's too much canvas. You are over canvassed," is the word that you use. Like there's
Wow.
too much exposure to the wind. That little spar out in front is too thin, and he knew it's probably going to break. So during the race, it broke, and it's recorded. It's part of the story, and so on. In that diagram, it's included in the diagram as a dotted line because it was there at the beginning of the race,
Right.
and then it wasn't there at the end of the race. And I thought it would be more dramatic if, like, we had them on deck, like wrestling with the piece of like that's the sail lying there, and the crew are like moving the spar out of the way, and these guys are trying to tie up the loose ropes there while the race is going on. So
I think you nailed it. I mean, that did happen.
it did happen,
And
Yeah.
it's not, it's like a snapshot in
yeah,
a ship model.
It's an Easter egg too,
Right.
for the people who know and now the audience at home knows the story too.
Right.
If you don't know the story, you might not even notice the broken off part. But maybe if you're staring long enough, or maybe some wise young precocious kid would say, "Hey, mommy, how come that's broken?"
We're waiting for that kid. So, kids.
The inside of all of this is what I'm
definitely. But I'm telling you, this was kind of COVID era-ish.
Yeah, we were all wearing masks. at
Right, we're
first.
still wearing masks.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the museum should be really proud. Frank, I know, is proud. I
am proud. Oh, you should hear my
And-
mom on the topic.
And
Hi,
Frank's
Mom.
Mom
I'm
is
staying on
proud. We
tonight.
actually do everything for Frank's mom. Hi, Barbara.
She's so great.
And so, we really want to share this with the community, and hopefully this program will help tweak that. But we really want you to see it in the museum. So I'm going to move this over because my
Your arms
are
gonna get
locked
tired.
up.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah, I'm glad that the museum has it in their permanent collection. I'm honored and proud to have built it, but I really I feel like I don't want to wag a finger at the world, but Hoboken had forgotten the ship, I think, and they should
Right.
remember it. Hoboken has so many great stories of things that it invented. There's Frank Sinatra, there's baseball, there's my favorite is the zipper or the Oreo cookie, those things.
Okay, so we're going to segue into your next project.
It's
Okay,
What's coming?
so Frank is not done. We call Frank our maritime artist in residence.
Sure.
Ship modeling is an artistic form. And then I asked Frank, what are we doing for 2024 or the end of this year? And you want to talk about that? Should we hold this up so we have a visual?
The idea is to build a ship in a bottle.
Right, hold that up proudly.
So
it's the
hard. If you put it
disappearing.
in front of your shirt, it'll be
Okay.
visible.
There
Yeah,
it
there we
is.
go. Yeah.
Okay.
So ships and bottles go back in history, and people have heard. I don't have to explain what a ship in a bottle is.
No, I think it's
But
pretty literal.
there are people who don't know how you get the ship in the bottle. So I'm not going to give away here. You're going to have to come in and see me build one. But
Right.
the
And the
idea is
idea is to have people build their own.
right. And but
Right?
isn't it true that like somebody donated bottles that are from the ground in Hoboken?
Yes, we have an incredible bottle collection from Dominic Russo, who's passed within the last year, and many of the bottles are Hoboken, so we'll be putting those in the
Right.
collection.
The idea is we'll use
But
a
there are other
Hoboken
bottles that are just vintage, shall we say, and have a great look, and we feel we can use them for this project.
Right.
So you don't even have to bring your own bottle, and it's going to be a fun project.
Yeah, I'll be working on that same desk, which you guys can't see, but it's right behind where the camera is, right behind you. And it's the upper gallery. So
Yeah, same place. You'll be working within the shadow of the America model. I like how the reflectance is working on this. It looks like
looks like water in there. Yeah.
It's very
yeah.
cool, but that is a digital illusion. And do you want to hold up your mini?
Oh yeah, this is a tiny ship model.
Aw.
Like it's the same. This is
It's
in
ship
scale.
model X.
That's and actually, I had mentioned the South Street Seaport Museum. Both of these ships are were in the collection of the South Street Seaport Museum. This is
the big ones.
Yeah, this is the Peking, which is now in Germany. It's not coming back to New York. It was,
Okay.
and people will remember it. And then this is the Waiver Tree, the ship I rigged in Staten Island.
So
7 years
basically,
ago.
you can buy a little bottle over at Sparrows,
Right, yeah.
consume it, and then build a ship in a bottle and say you're doing research for your project.
Right,
Right?
yeah.
So that's how that could work. Anyway, here's your
Oh
cool
yeah,
collection.
yeah, I was going to say that I wanted to demystify it. It might have sound in all that tumble of words that it was really complex, but it really isn't. And these are the tools I was using. It's mostly things that you could buy at a stationery store. Most of the glue that I used was just Elmer's glue, although I also used weld bond glue, which is not rocket science glue. These are not special
Yeah, but where do
tools.
you get the patience to do a project
It takes
like
a lot
this?
of time. There's
Time and
yeah.
patience.
You shouldn't take up this hobby if you are in a hurry or if you don't care about the boats at all. Like you should, like if you care about boats, ship models are great. Everybody should have one.
Right.
And you can buy. There are kits that will.
Don't talk about kids.
Yeah, but everything comes in the box. You don't have to even go to the Home Depot and get the.
Oh,
wood
that's
yourself.
kind of boring.
is.
You did it from scratch.
Right. It's
So
in the classing of models, there's scratch built models, there's kit built models. Under
Right.
scratch building, there's like different categories. This is a solid hull scratch built model.
come into the frame a little bit.
Oh yeah. Sorry, off to the side.
So we're kind of winding down.
Yes,
We've
yeah.
been wanting to do this project for a while, and hopefully you've signed up for our digital newsletter. You can learn more about the programs that we're doing at the museum, which are numerous. And we'd love to get you in here just to check out the ship model, and maybe you'll get involved in the ship in a bottle building program. I don't think we actually picked a date, but I think we're going into, late September.
Soon, yeah.
Soon. Right.
Real
right.
soon.
How many Saturdays until we run out of bottles, I think.
Yeah, and
that-
these actually, the ships and bottles are a lot quicker to build.
okay.
So
you
it
can
won't
walk
be-
out with
it. Won't be like a year and a half
No,
working on one of
unless you
these.
put this ship in a bottle.
Right, yeah.
Right,
And there are
that'd be-
people that go to great lengths, but you could, schooner in a bottle, pretty simple.
Right.
I think that anybody could do it. I really do.
Okay. So I'm not going to say that. We are done.
We're done. We're
Okay,
done.
it feels great.
I do want to thank the museum, though.
Sure.
And I always try to throw in the thanks to the state of New Jersey grant process. And like there's money that trickles down from places where I want that money to keep going to
We'll be
cultural
thanking
places.
them in a second.
Yeah,
actually.
yeah.
So don't
yeah.
worry. Don't
But
worry.
I mean, I really believe it, and I thank the people who are behind the curtain pulling the levers of power.
Okay. So again, we've had a great discussion with Frank Hanavan, our maritime artist in residence. Thank you
Let's
from the
thank Melissa Abernathy, who put in so much of her life in this museum, but has moved on to other places.
That's true,
Melissa,
and did
thanks so
sign
much.
in tonight. So
Right?
she
Yeah.
had a good connection.
Thanks to
with
our
you.
audience who came in, John.
Yep.
Gene Paul, you're a
And-
great guy. He came in almost every day with his wife.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
to watch the
Mary
whole
enjoyed
process.
it. Yeah, definitely.
And
definitely.
now here at the end, as it all wraps up.
Yeah. So we'll just mention Hoboken Talks is broadcast pretty religiously the second and last Thursday of the month. And upcoming in September, we'll be speaking with Annette Chaparro. And after that, it'll be Barbara Reyes. These are two Hoboken strong women with great perspectives on the town. And they'll be interviewed by Vera Serrata, who has been doing our PR of late and doing a great job. And really looking forward to those. And then, speaking of funders, we're thanking the New Jersey Historical Commission, which just came to our rescue with the 3-year GOS funding that we'll be getting for
Look
the
at
next
that nice
year.
logo they have.
And nice script.
Yeah.
It actually kind of looks like the placard on your ship model in a way that
classy.
McKevin put together. So
did we thank McKevin? He was helpful. He was the one who printed out those the
I think I forgot. So McKevin Shaughnessy is always behind the scenes, is our exhibit designer and helps on so many ways. Another funder, the New Jersey Council for the Humanities, who have funded our current exhibit, which is up until December 23rd. And again, special shout out to our Shipyard Circle supporters who give at a certain level. And many of them are museum trustees, all good folks. And Iron State is our keystone supporter, and we thank them every day.
Nice.
Thank you to the Barry family. And then again, mentioned that our current exhibit is The Fires, Hoboken 1978 to 1982. It did open in January of 2023. It's had a long run, but we're still getting really good vibes from its presentation. It's curated by Chris Lopez, and it'll be up until December 23rd. And then we'll be surprising you with the new exhibit.
Ooh, I'm not even going to ask. I know it's going to be great, though.
And then in the upper gallery, we have the work Pen and Ink Drawings by Peter Ferdalassia. I'm always stepping on his name a little bit, but I love his style. You're not looking at Hoboken. You're looking at pen and ink drawings from, shall we say, the Palisades area. And this would be heading north on Boulevard East, and
that looks very
looking at
much
the
like
rocks.
there, yeah.
Peter has a very unique style. This exhibit will be open till I believe September 17ish. And so when you visit Peter's exhibit, which is pretty special, you can check out Frank's ship model of the America.
Yeah.
And we are always sort of coming up with different programs. This is one that's put together by Danny Schott, who is our poet in residence. So we got maritime artists and we got poets in residence.
What a museum. What a museum.
And this is linked to, shall we say, what's going on in the Ukraine. And these are all poets who have a very unique perspective from their cultural backgrounds. And our own Vera Serrata is also a bona fide poet, and she will be part of the tribe presenting. That's, as you see, September 10th. And it will be live streamed, but we prefer you come in person, but it will be archived. And again, please sign on to the YouTube channel, subscribe. It gives us a little more outreach and certain other privileges connected with that when you sign on. And, please support the museum. You can come visit in person, but a program like this is, in a sense, archived until YouTube starts charging us a lot of money for it.
I go back and listen to the other
I'm just kidding. Frank listens every night to his previous programs.
I think I sound great on the other interview.
Okay.
I can't wait to go back and listen to this.
Okay, that's interesting. I myself never watch.
Oh, you haven't?
No,
Oh.
I never do.
You hear about authors that never go back and read the
Yeah,
books.
it's one of those things,
And did we thank Rand? He's right here.
Let's thank Rand. Do you want to do it?
Rand, without you, I don't know how. I just don't know how.
So Rand Hopp is behind the other screen, the man behind the screen, the man behind the curtain, and is in charge of our collections.
There's all these cables off screen, and they're all going to his desk with a computer and another monitor.
And then we break down the studio, so we have a gallery for Friday.
Right.
Kind of amazing. Anyway, we are signing out. We came in at about an hour and 10 minutes,
Wow.
which I can't believe we made it this short.
Well, I could have gone on. There were other stories.
Stop. Anyway, tuning out. Thank you so much, everyone.
Bye.
See you in the museum.